Hi, guys. Measles cases are still on the rise across the country and at levels not seen in 35 years. The new numbers are deeply concerning. They show more than 2,300 cases, which is already higher than all of 2025.
The CDC says more than 90% of the infections are among people not vaccinated against measles.
To discuss what we're dealing with, we're joined by Dr. Anita Dua, a surgeon and founder of Healthcare for Action, an organization which supports healthcare workers who run for political office.
Thanks so much for joining us, Dr. Dua. So let's start with your reaction to the latest measles numbers released by the CDC. What do you make of this?
To be honest with you, they're not surprising. They're what we've been saying since the very beginning when conversation about vaccination started to come into play and people started to get skeptical. You know, the saddest thing about it is, as you said, the majority of these cases are in people who are not vaccinated, and that group actually is by primarily people under the age of 20, and children who are under the age of 5 are the most likely to be hospitalized. So what we're really saying here is that thousands of people are getting this, and of that group, the majority that are going to the hospital and really getting sick and traumatized are our children.
One of the things that's interesting to me is I think we were at 95%, was that right? Which is considered herd immunity, and now we're down to 92.5%. That may seem like a small difference to people. Can you tell us why it's not?
Yes, of course, because it's not about the percentage, it's about the absolute numbers. So basically, when you drop below 95% of people who are vaccinated, you now have a critical mass of people that do not have protection and therefore could have measles and then spread it. And the real problem is a combination of that statistic and how contagious measles is. If you talk to any parent, right, who has a child in daycare, they'll tell you, oh, I'm always getting sick all the time because my child is going to daycare, picking up all these little viruses, coming home and giving it to us. Measles is more contagious than some of those viruses. So if a child is around other children and that child is unvaccinated and there's not enough herd immunity, you can get a situation where multiple people, specifically ones who are immunocompromised or ones who don't have vaccinations, can pick the disease up. And then those people go out to other groups that unfortunately are also not vaccinated, and it just spreads very quickly. So it's not a matter of just 95 to 92. We know from almost 100 years of data that when 95% of the population is vaccinated, that's when you don't have enough people with the disease to really cause a spread. And what you're seeing here is because of the last few years, because of the vaccination rates dropping during COVID, and then of course the questioning of vaccines with this new administration, we're now seeing that massive drop, and it's continuing to drop in some states. And unfortunately, at this point, 45% of our states, 45 states out of 50 have seen some measles and people that have come through. And that means that ultimately we're going to see a rise in these numbers before we start to see a fall.
So we're still in July and already surpassing last year's numbers. How much higher do you expect these numbers to climb?
Well, it's all dependent on how many people out there who are not vaccinated. I mean, the numbers can get wildly out of control. And this is not a fear-mongering tactic. I mean, of course, people come on and say all kinds of crazy things. But right now, we are looking at the real numbers here. To your point, within the last 35 years, we've had less cases than just what we've seen recently. So you can imagine if this now doubles or triples, you're going to see a significant proportion of people. And so what you need to do right now is if you do have a child who's unvaccinated, really take it seriously, specifically about the MMR, about measles. This is something that everyone has gotten behind. It's not Democrats or Republicans. Even RFK has come out himself and said, this is one vaccine that you really should get.
The Pan American Health Association has delayed until November a decision on whether the U.S. retains the measles elimination status it earned in 2000. What does that say to you?
That says that we really have a problem. You know, we eliminated this in 2000. We were thrilled about it. It's a really big deal because it's protection of our citizens. But unfortunately, if we lose that status, what it means is it's going to take years to get it back because, again, we're going to have to get to that 95% herd immunity. And, you know, this is a little bit like trust. You know, it takes years to build up, but it takes a second to lose. And what we have right now is a combination of a number of people out there that have the disease in conjunction with people who are skeptical and new children being born every single day where more and more people are not getting the vaccine the way that they should. So quite frankly, we need to ensure that we keep that status. And that's going to mean a very large campaign and people coming out and saying, this is, again, a vaccine that you really should be getting.
I want to talk to you a little bit about the Cyclospora outbreak. The CDC is linking iceberg lettuce to an outbreak in 9 states now. What's the latest on this? There's been some confusion about where this came from and what is the trajectory of these infections.
So there's definitely been confusion because at this point, it's difficult to really trace down exactly. I will say this, Cyclospora is actually a human parasite. So it's not from animals, which is one of the biggest confusions that's out there. So what that really means is basically a person gets it in their digestive system, they poop, that poop can get into the water supply that might be growing this lettuce. And then unfortunately that gets into the digestive tract of someone who eats it. So that's the cycle. And then, of course, that causes very severe diarrhea, cramping, bloating, hospitalization. Luckily, no one has died. So that's the clarification of some facts. But, of course, what you're seeing here is that if we don't have good regulations and we don't have good oversight on where our food is coming from, you can get these types of outbreaks. Today, it's Cyclospora. Tomorrow, it could be something else. If you do have this parasite, the treatment for it is antibiotics. But, of course, just the idea of getting this parasite traumatizes a lot of people, given the way that you can get it.
So listening to you speak between the measles and people who are unvaccinated and the kind of passive push by the administration that vaccines aren't important, and Cyclospora, where regulatory oversight from the FDA perhaps have been rolled back, what do you make of government influence on health in the United States of America?
In the United States of America, government influence is fundamentally important. So if you don't have appropriate government, you are going to get sick. It's a public health issue, and public health is something that, unfortunately, you can't just control suddenly. So, for example, what you said about the measles, a couple of policies came out that rolled back ideas in people's minds about whether or not you should get vaccinated. That just happened over the last year. And look at already what has happened in the number of cases. And it's not easy for the, policies to just change and the people to catch up. In the healthcare space, when you have bad policy, then you have a situation where it takes years in order for people to rectify, and sometimes they don't rectify the negatives that have occurred. So what I will say is that electing people who are going to understand these things, understand the unintended consequences is fundamentally important. You don't have to be crazy about regulation. You don't have to get to a point where it becomes something that gets in the way of day-to-day life. But you have to ensure that the decisions that are made on Capitol Hill actually translate to health safety, because that is the job of the government.
All right, Dr. Anita Dua, surgeon and founder of Healthcare for Action. Always great to have you on. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.